They said the code name was just a myth until she walked into the briefing room unannounced. Her voice made two generals stand at attention before she even spoke her name. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Subscribe for more untold, true-inspired stories that were meant to stay hidden. No one was supposed to be in the war room that morning, except those already listed on the Black Clearance Manifest. The meeting was classified under the designation Spectre Dust, a name few had heard and even fewer had used in a sentence. But when the door opened at exactly 7:59 a.m., 1 minute before lockdown, every conversation stopped. She didn't knock. She didn't show a badge. She didn't even wear a uniform. She just walked in. Shoulder-length blonde hair, steel gray eyes. Civilian clothing, plain and outdated. The only official item she carried was an old canvas bag, military-issued, dated 1992. "Excuse me, ma'am. This is a classified debrief." A young lieutenant tried to stop her. She didn't look at him. She looked at the two men seated at the head of the table, General Thorne and Brigadier General Kessler. Both men, seasoned and scarred, stood the second her eyes met theirs. No words had been exchanged yet. Still, they rose. The others in the room watched in frozen silence. Then she spoke. "I need the file code named Echo. Now, before it activates again." The air in the room thickened. General Thorne swallowed. "That operation was sealed 27 years ago." "It wasn't sealed," she replied. "It was silenced." Kessler hesitated. "Who are you?" She placed a worn leather ID holder on the table. The name was partially faded, but one word stood out, burned into the room like smoke from a cold fire. "Velvet." A code name. One that shouldn't have resurfaced. The projector screen flickered. The tech officer in the back stared at his monitor. "Sir, she's logged into the secure net. Her signal just authenticated through Tier 10. "Tier 10, the lieutenant muttered. "That doesn't exist." The woman, Velvet, placed a small, circular object on the table. It looked like a coin. Then it pulsed once, softly, and a map appeared on the screen without any device connected. A red dot blinked over the Black Sea. 3 days ago," she said. "The signal resurfaced from an untraceable drone. But it wasn't random. It was a trigger. A protocol only I was meant to recognize." General Thorne sat back down, visibly shaken. "You said it was buried, that it wouldn't come back." "I said it shouldn't come back," she corrected him. Outside, security agents began to form outside the door. Someone had triggered the silent alarm. She turned to the room. "If you stop me now, you'll be chasing shadows for the next 6 months." She picked up her bag and moved toward the exit. "But if you let me finish what I started, you might still have a country left to defend." The door closed behind her. No orders were given. No one moved, because everyone in that room knew what Velvet Echo meant, and why the legends had always said, if she shows up again, something's already gone wrong. She walked into a locked war room. No clearance, no uniform. But when she said the word Echo, 2 generals stood up. They tracked her movement through 4 checkpoints, but never saw her leave. Velvet had a way of not being followed. She didn't vanish. She folded herself out of systems. An hour later, an encrypted packet landed in Colonel Wyatt's inbox. No subject line, no sender, just coordinates. Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine. Abandoned listening post. Decommissioned in 2001. Off the record since 2012. Erased in 2018. Wyatt stared at the blinking cursor in the message. "I'll be there in 36 hours. If you send anyone else, I'll know." The city was still cold in April. Velvet stepped off the train wearing the same outdated coat, her military-issue bag still strapped to her shoulder. No luggage, no entourage, but someone was already watching. 3 floors up, a drone tech from Task Force Zephyr tracked her movement through a thermal scope. The team had been deployed hours earlier, just in case Velvet was an imposter. Or worse, a resurrected asset gone rogue. "Visual confirmed," said the tech over comms. "Target acquired. No second contact. Do not engage," came Wyatt's voice over the encrypted line. "Let her lead." She entered the listening post through a half-collapsed cellar door. The building groaned with memory. Peeling walls, rusted comm panels, a Soviet ghost buried under NATO wires. In the dark, she didn't use a flashlight. Instead, she pulled out the same coin-sized device from the Pentagon. It pulsed again. This time, the walls answered. A low hum, then a click. A section of the concrete wall shimmered and blinked off like a failed illusion. Behind it, a secure locker sealed by biometric lock. She placed her palm on the scanner. It hesitated, then turned green. Inside, a single steel container, dusted but untouched. Velvet ran her finger along the serial number. VX-117. You never left me. She opened it slowly. Inside was a sealed document envelope, an old satellite relay chip, and a sniper scope, military grade, etched with the forgotten unit's crest. Unit Echo. 2 blocks away, Colonel Wyatt sat in a mobile comm van, watching in real time. The drone footage blinked, then froze, then went black. "Sir, we've lost visual," said the operator. Wyatt leaned in. "That's not a malfunction. That's her telling us to stop watching." The silence inside the van was sharp. A low-level analyst whispered, "Is she rogue?" Wyatt shook his head. "No, she's awake." At midnight, Velvet stood on the roof of the post, overlooking the hollow city. She raised the scope to her eye, not to fire but to align. In the crosshairs, a building lit in infrared, pulsing with unauthorized signals. Her lips parted. "It's still live," she whispered. "Then this isn't a memory, it's a trap." She tapped her comm device. "I'm going dark. If I don't resurface in 72 hours, burn everything with the name Echo on it." Then she dropped into the shadows, disappearing between chimneys and comm towers like she'd done before, when she wasn't a legend yet, just a ghost with unfinished work. The world knew her as a myth. An intelligence whisper passed between shadow units and classified footnotes. Velvet wasn't a name, it was a warning. And tonight, she'd stepped into the fire again. 12 hours after her signal vanished in Crivy RIH, the Joint Recon Desk flagged a ping. It came from a long-dormant transponder. VX-117. The coordinates? An abandoned textile mill 2 miles outside the city, once used to fabricate Soviet uniforms, now blacklisted due to chemical exposure. Velvet's last known location. Wyatt was in the air within the hour. As his transport sliced across Polish airspace, he read the decrypted mission logs from the VX-117 container. His fingers trembled on the last line. Project Echo. Asset embedded post-dissolution. Failsafes engaged. If activated, trust no protocol. Velvet moved like muscle memory. She didn't run. She recalibrated, slipping through the busted framework of the textile facility, ears tuned to the static of old frequencies. They had reactivated Echo not because they wanted her, but because they were desperate. She paused beneath a rusted stairwell, listening. There, footsteps. Heavy, untrained. 4 of them. Likely ex-contractors, black bag for deniability. She exhaled once. By the time the first man cleared the stairwell, she was gone. A second later, he was unconscious. 2 more flanked left, flashlights swinging wild. One muttered, "She's just a ghost story." Then the lights cut out. The last thing they heard was the click of a repurposed mind sensor, recalibrated to stun. When Wyatt arrived on site 2 hours later, the bodies were zip-tied, breathing, and stacked like surplus gear. Not a single bone broken. Just a note. Tell command. This place was never cold. And neither am I. But what Velvet hadn't told them, what she'd only whispered into the silence, was that the facility had responded to her watch. It wasn't just a storage vault. It was a signal node. Buried beneath the floor, under lead shielding and concrete rot, was a server. Still warm, still listening, and still talking back. She jacked in a military-grade relay, bypassed standard decryption, and let the system recognize her. A single file appeared. Echo 09, second hands active. Her eyes narrowed. There weren't supposed to be second units. Just her. And now they were moving. Far away, in a different time zone, a secure military terminal blinked. A general in dark civvies stirred his coffee. A red alert banner scrolled across his tablet. Velvet resurfaced. Contact, Echo 09 inch. He didn't say a word, just lifted a burner phone and dialed one number. No greeting, just a breath. She knows. The voice on the other end paused. Then, quietly, activate Theta Protocol. Burn what's left. The general nodded. And the girl? She's not a girl, the voice said. She's the storm you forgot to track. That night, Velvet lit a flare on the roof of the textile mill. Not to signal help, but to lure them. Let's see who forgot I existed, she muttered. And in the distance, black vans began to roll, headlights cutting through ash and smoke like a warning too late to heed. The first vehicle didn't have a license plate. The second didn't have windows. The third had no driver, just a guidance rig wired into the dash and a blinking red light on the rear fender. Velvet watched from the rooftop as they formed a triangle around the old textile mill, headlights piercing through mist like blades through fabric. But she didn't move. Not yet. She was waiting for confirmation. Inside, beneath layers of concrete and silence, the Echo 09 terminal whispered to life again. Theta Protocol. Phase 1. Her jaw clenched. That protocol was reserved for rogue assets, not recovery. They weren't trying to bring her in. They were trying to erase her. She scanned the code dump and found the activation string. Something crude, rushed. Whoever authorized this wasn't following doctrine. It smelled more like panic than precision. She tapped a manual override into the server, paused, and then did something no one expected. She broadcasted, not to command, to every known Echo terminal on the eastern seaboard. Velvet Online. They're burning files. I'm not done. In a war room 4,000 miles away, alarms went off. Colonel Wyatt, already mid-briefing with Joint Intelligence, stood up as 3 screens flashed red. Unauthorized broadcast. Tier Z clearance. Location. Crivy, RH. A NATO liaison stared at him. That site was marked decommissioned in 1999. Apparently, Wyatt said, they forgot to tell her. He turned to his aide. Send a retrieval team. Not a kill squad. Not unless you want another Lisbon protocol on your hands. The aide hesitated. Sir, Theta's already been activated externally. Wyatt's face went pale. Who overrode me? Back at the mill, Velvet heard the first drone before she saw it. It buzzed past like a hornet on adrenaline, scanning heat signatures. It hovered above the southern corridor, where she'd left a dummy transmitter and 3 warm water bottles. It struck. Wrong target. The explosion rocked the foundation, but Velvet barely flinched. She had already moved to the service tunnels, dragging her satchel of extracted hard drives and one particular file labeled Echo Shadow Names. That list could dismantle more than a few careers, and likely one presidency. As she reached the exit vent, her watch blinked. Not time. Message. A secure text. V. The girl is active. They're coming for both of you. Don't let her remember. Velvet's blood froze. The girl? She thought they'd scrubbed all of Phase 1 subjects. She thought she was the last. Apparently not. 10 hours later, in a decontamination chamber deep beneath a private embassy in Vienna, Velvet pulled off her gloves, stared at her weathered reflection, and murmured. They didn't bury Echo. They planted it. She reached into her coat, pulled out the broken rifle scope recovered from her final deployment, and slid it across the table. The diplomat across from her raised an eyebrow. This is how you want to trade? Velvet nodded. This, she said, belonged to the one they erased. And I need to find her before they do. Meanwhile, at a compound disguised as a weather station on the northern Caspian coast, a girl sat alone in a cold metal room. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. A handler spoke through a speaker overhead. You're not ready yet. You don't remember enough. The girl turned her head slowly toward the ceiling camera. I remember her name, she whispered. Velvet. And that's when the lights began to flicker. The storm over the Caspian wasn't on any forecast. But the girl in the chamber knew it was coming. She sat upright on the edge of the steel cot, fingers folded, hair buzzed close to the scalp. No scars, no tattoos, no tags. Yet her mind bore marks no scan could trace. Each morning they wiped her memories. Each night, something came back. And this time was a name. Velvet. The handlers behind the one-way glass exchanged looks. One of them scribbled something on a clipboard. The other tapped a code into the console. Theta, 12 suppression cycle. But the girl didn't blink. Not when the pulse signal hit. Not when the lights flickered again. because the memory had latched, and she wasn't going to let go. Thousands of miles away, Velvet sat in the back of a decommissioned armored vehicle outside Vienna. Rain tapped against the roof like static. She rewatched the satellite footage of the compound on a cracked military tablet. Encrypted transmissions, heavy shielding, a thermal signature barely detectable. But someone had whispered the truth. Phase 2 survived. She leaned forward, adjusting her scarf. Then they lied to all of us. Her handler, an ex-French SIGIN analyst named Dax, lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "You're telling me that child remembers you?" Velvet didn't respond immediately. She stared into the distance. "She remembers the pain." "That's enough." 3 hours later, they breached the outer perimeter under cover of static burst and satellite eclipse. The compound's eastern wall had a blind spot, engineered into the blueprints decades ago. Not by accident, but by someone who knew the truth might need a way back in. Velvet scaled the wall like she was returning home. By the time they reached sublevel 3, alarms had triggered. Protocol rooms sealed. Theta guards activated. But none of it slowed her down. She didn't come to hide. She came to show them she still remembered everything. Room 117A. The number meant nothing to Dax. But Velvet paused. This is where she was made, and where the girl now sat. She pushed the door open slowly. The girl was standing, eyes wide, not afraid but alert. "You came," the girl said. Velvet didn't answer. She stepped in, closed the door behind her. "They told me you died," the girl whispered. "I did," Velvet said. "But someone kept the wrong part of me alive." Silence. Then the girl reached in her coat and pulled out something small, worn, metallic. A tag. Velvet took a step forward. It was her old ID chip. "How did you get this?" The girl looked down. "I dug it out. From my shoulder." Velvet exhaled sharply. "Then they really did turn you into me." Overhead, explosions began. The compound had triggered self-wipe. Dax shouted over comms. "They're collapsing the data wing. You have 2 minutes." Velvet grabbed the girl's hand. "Come with me. Now." "I don't know who I am," the girl murmured. "You don't need to. Yet. Just know this. Your name is not a number. It's not a code." The girl looked up. "It's Echo, and I'll help you rewrite what they erased." As they sprinted through the backup tunnels, flames licked the walls behind them. Sirens wailed. Systems failed. But Velvet had what she came for, not just a file. A soul they tried to duplicate. A version they couldn't control. And for the first time in 12 years, she wasn't the only one who remembered. Smoke trailed behind them like a second shadow. Velvet and Echo ran through a narrow ventilation shaft, heat pulsing against the metal walls, alarms screaming with synthetic panic. Every 5 steps, the girls stumbled. But Velvet never let go. Behind them, the facility consumed itself. Phase 2 wasn't just shutting down. It was erasing history. But Velvet had stolen something they couldn't wipe, a living version of their failed experiment. An Echo. She was starting to remember things she was never meant to. They reached the exfil point, a collapsed service hatch covered in rust and moss. Dax waited with the stolen van, engine already hot. He threw open the rear doors. "She okay?" he barked. Velvet nodded. "She's stable." Dax's eyes locked on the girl's forearm. "That mark, what is that?" A number glowed faintly under her skin. Echo looked down, confused. "It started glowing after I touched her." Velvet's voice was flat. "It's a proximity cipher. They injected them into us years ago, meant to sync memory logs across units." "You mean?" "She's not a clone. She's a key." The drive out was chaos. Roadblocks. Drones overhead. But they moved with precision, like ghosts retracing their steps through the land of the living. Inside the van, Echo sat between silence and fire. "Why do I see your face in my dreams?" Velvet didn't turn. "Because you weren't just built from my file. You inherited my grief." Echo flinched. "What happens to me now?" "You survive, and we find the others." 10 hours later, in an abandoned NATO facility beneath Zurich, they decoded the imprint on Echo's skin. Each pulse of light translated into numbers, coordinates. "Are these launch sites?" Dax asked. Velvet shook her head. "No, they're names. Names of what's left of us." Across a rusted map wall, pins started to appear. Europe, Asia, the Americas. 12 pulses. 12 names. 12 fragments of a secret war that never made the papers. Echo traced one location with her fingertip. This one, I know it. I've seen it. In my sleep. Velvet narrowed her eyes. That's where the program began. Dax looked up uneasy. You're not going back there. That site was redacted years ago. It was buried, Velvet said, because that's where the first generation died. Echo whispered, or where they're still alive. Velvet stood, her reflection catching in the dark glass. I'll go alone if I have to. Echo rose beside her. You won't. Their shadows overlapped, past and future converging. And behind them, in the flickering lights of a forgotten command room, the data pinged. One of the 12 had just gone active, and they weren't alone anymore. The mountain base in Ruggan was supposed to be silent, buried beneath rock, wiped from NATO records in '97, and marked as condemned infrastructure in satellite archives. But the closer they got, the louder the ghosts became. Velvet stared at the flickering perimeter sensors through her binoculars. No guards, no drones, no signal jammers, she muttered. Echo stood beside her, quiet, watching the wind stir dead grass along the chain-link fence. Too quiet, she said. Dax, tapping through an old command tablet, exhaled. Base shows 0 emissions, but I'm picking up heartbeat readings. Velvet turned sharply. Human. Yeah, 1, maybe 2. They exchanged a glance and moved. The breach was surgical. They entered through a collapsed intake tunnel, stepping over rusted ductwork and frostbitten wire. The inside was worse than expected. Mold, ash, old signs still hanging from peeling walls. Biomedical testing, phase Zeta. Echo paused beneath the sign. I've seen this word in my dreams, she whispered. Zeta. Velvet placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not dreaming anymore. They reached the inner chamber and found him. A man. Alive. Barely. Slumped in a chair, tethered to 4 lines. Surrounded by flickering CRT monitors and backup generators held together by duct tape and hope. He looked up slowly. "K. Knox." Velvet froze. No one's called me that in 15 years. His face was pale, beard untrimmed, eyes sunken, but his voice held weight. You're not supposed to be here. You either, Velvet answered. He coughed. They left me to monitor residual signals. In case any of you woke up. Velvet stepped forward. How many are left? He shook his head. You're not the only one with a copy, Knox. There were backups, partial memory maps. They stitched traits together. Some worked. Some went insane. Others just disappeared. Echo stepped forward, voice shaking. What am I? The man turned to her. Paused. You're the worst-kept secret of them all. You're the prototype of their reboot. Velvet's jaw clenched. They tried to start over. And failed. Repeatedly. But you, he pointed to Echo, you survived the memory anchoring. That means you're not just like her. You're her, and more. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. An alarm buzzed once, then died. Dax's voice cracked through the calm. We've got incoming. 2 unmarked hellos. Fast approach. 5 minutes. Velvet looked at the dying man. Where are the rest of the files? He pointed to a panel behind him. Manual archive. Paper. Burn it or take it. Doesn't matter. They're already here. Velvet moved fast, grabbing the thick manila folders from the compartment. Inside, names, old rosters, coordinates, even pictures. One file, marked Sovereign, was sealed with wax. Echo clutched it. What's Sovereign? The man smiled weakly. The original plan, before you were born. And then he collapsed. Velvet didn't hesitate. She pulled Echo back into the tunnel just as a shockwave cracked the surface doors above them. They're not here to contain, she said. They're here to finish the experiment. They vanished into the darkness, data in hand, a dead past in pursuit. The world above still thought they were ghosts. Velvet, Echo, and Dax emerged from the ruined tunnel soaked in ash and sweat. The stolen files gripped tight like relics from forgotten war. The compound was gone, leveled by precision strikes. No debris, no recovery, just a smoldering scar on Ruggan's surface. Extraction is 30 clicks east, Dax said. But we've got to move. Comms are being jammed. We're blind. Velvet didn't blink. Then we go silent. Echo's voice trembled, not from fear, but from knowing. They knew we'd find it. No, Velvet replied. They wanted us to. Hours later, inside a black site bunker beneath Helsinki, the decrypted files lay across the cold metal table. Each page, handwritten, classified, signed with initials long erased from service records. Sovereign Project, EST 1983. Objective: replicate and reprogram human potential under combat pressure. Each name listed wasn't just a soldier. They were prototypes, experiments in memory transfer, skill grafting, psychological remodeling. Velvet's name appeared first. Subject: V01. Knox. Then Echo. Then 24 others, dead, missing, or declared unstable. But what struck them all was a redacted page titled Phase Omega Civil Integration Units. It was dated last year. Echo looked up. They restarted Sovereign with civilians. Velvet nodded slowly. That means this wasn't just about us. It's still happening. Dax slammed his fist on the table. They're building operatives out of regular people. Velvet stood. Her voice was steel. Then we make them remember why they buried us. They move quickly. Encrypted drops to the international press. Secure uploads to ghost networks. Whistleblower leaks disguised as declassified archives. And a single envelope mailed to the Defense Oversight Committee in D.C. with nothing but one photo. A picture of Velvet, in uniform, holding Echo's hand on the steps of the Sovereign compound. Behind them, the insignia, a chess king shattered by a bullet. The world wouldn't understand it all, but someone would. A week later, Velvet stood in a cafe off a quiet street in Munich. The screen behind the bar played a breaking news alert. Former NATO program linked to civilian training breaches. Military officials remained silent. She took a sip of bitter coffee, watched Echo laugh softly across the table, watched the world go on, blissfully unaware. You think they'll come? Echo asked. Velvet smiled faintly. They never stopped. She tapped her watch. A small pulse vibrated once. The screen at the bar flickered, just for a second, then cleared. Echo leaned in. Was that? Velvet nodded. A signal. Outside, the sky rumbled. And across the world, people in quiet rooms received the same message. Project Sovereign. Breach confirmed. Subjects active. They tried to erase the ghosts. But the ghosts learned to walk through fire. Now, they were no longer hiding. Now, they were hunting. Thank you for watching. This story was inspired by the resilience of those who serve in silence and the truths buried beneath official history. If you felt something while watching, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe and stay with us for the next mission. Until then, stay sharp, stay brave.